morning, good afternoon, good evening. Greetings from Cremona, Italy. Um, it's an honor to introduce today's day in order to celebrate one of the most fundamental aspects of humankind and civilization, human rights. Before launching the first video of the webinar, I will say a few words of introduction. Both the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights refer to a fundamental and universal human right, that is, the right of freedom of thought, conscience, religion, or belief. Often referred to as a freedom of religion or belief, it is articulated in both the both covenants, respectively, in the Article 18 and Article 2. I would like to quote some excerpts from both covenants. Article 18 reads, "Everyone shall have the right to freedom of thought or belief of his choice, and freedom, either individually or in community, with other and in public or private, to manifest his religion or belief in worship, observance, practice, and teaching. Freedom to manifest one's religion or belief may be subject only to such limitations as are prescribed by law and are necessary to protect public safety, order, health, or morals, or the fundamental rights and freedoms of the others." Article 2 of the other covenant reads, "The rights enunciated in the present covenant will be exercised without discrimination of any kind as to race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status." Both excerpts show one crucial component in the endorsement of collective and individual freedom, namely the right itself. In the field of political theory, the debate over the notion of right focuses on its different dimensions and meanings. According to political scientist Jack Donnelly, this notion has both moral and political features. These latter connotations are well represented by the two concepts of rectitude, which might be related to something being right or wrong, and entitlement, which might be related to someone having a right. Open quote. "Denying you something that it would be right for you to enjoy in a just world," writes Donnelly, "is very different from denying you something that you have a right to enjoy." End of quote. Both conceptions concern the relations between people. If we consider human rights as a, open quote, "complex and contested social practice that organizes relations between individuals, society, and the state," and of course, then we understand how several implications emerge from this definition. More specifically, we understand that having a right means almost nothing, even in modern democracies, if it is not enforced or respected by fellow citizens. At the same time, being right might have nothing to do with the respect of human rights within a specific state or under a specific government. To understand how both features can coexist, we need to focus on a specific aspect of this dynamic. As Donnelly argues, human rights regulate relations between individuals and the state. As citizens, individuals are entitled to affirm their rights. Rights are not just mere ideas abstract concepts or values. Values need to be translated in active policies with rigorous standards of political life. In other words, quoting Donnelly again, open quote, human rights are not just abstract values such as liberty, equality, and security. They are rights and entitlements that ground particular social practices to realize those values. Human rights claims express not mere aspirations, suggestions, requests, or laudable ideas, but rights-based demands. And in contrast to other grounds on which goods, services, and opportunities might be demanded, for example, justice, utility, divine donation, or contract, human rights are owed to every human being as a human being. End of quote. This latter passage introduces two crucial aspects of human rights, their origin and their universality. In political theory, since the introduction of Thomas Hobbes' considerations on natural civil laws, scholars have discussed the reason why people could or should live together. The question that Donnelly poses here is, open quote, what in our nature gives us natural rights? End of quote. Needs and fear are frequent answers to the question. However, not all political imaginaries and scenarios lie on such principles. Therefore, human rights are not respected in the twofold conception previously presented only because governments are feared or because protection is needed. According to Donnelly, open quote, a closer examination suggests that human rights rest on our moral nature. They are grounded not in descriptive account of psychobiological needs, but in a prescriptive account of human possibility. We have human rights not to requisites for health, but to those things needed for a life worthy of a human being. End of quote. According once again to the political scientists, the core of a human nature is characterized by a moral feature. Given the fact that this innermost component grounds human rights, we cannot say that these latter are closer to a sort. We can say that these latter are closer to a sort of social project. My pardon. Human rights are both an utopian ideal and a realistic practice for implementing that ideal. The hybrid nature of a human right involves both the limits and the potentiality of a human society. According to Donnelly, human rights constitute individuals as a particular kind of political subject, which is, open quote, free and equal right-bearing citizens. Therefore, the UN II Covenants, together with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, marked a crucial achievement in the process that has been characterized by and through this notion of human rights. However, much more needs to be done. The Taiji case is, in this respect, emblematic. Taiwan is not a member of the is not a member state of the United Nations, yet it incorporated the two covenants into its domestic law in 2009. The financial persecution by the National Taxation Bureau against Taiji is a blatant violation of the covenant. Notwithstanding the 2007 decision of the Supreme Court, which declared Taiji defendants innocent of all charges, including tax evasion, the National Taxation Bureau maintained its unjust tax bills. Finally, After protracted litigation, it corrected all of them to zero, except the one for the year 1992, based on a legal technicality. Because of this fabricated tax bill, another violation of the covenant occurred in 2020 when, based on the taxes allegedly due for 1992, Taiji Man's sacred land in Mali was seized unsuccessfully, auctioned off, and nationalized. Finally, as recently as August 2, 2024, the two covenants were violated again when the Tai Kung Ai Administrative Court ruled against Taiji Man and failed to rectify the injustice vested on them. The Taiji Man case is a blatant example of how freedom of religion or belief, solemnly affirmed by the UN Human Rights Covenant, continues to be violated even in democratic countries. The case calls for an urgent solution. With this, I conclude my introduction, and I will ask the fellow technicians to launch the first video of the webinar.
On Human Rights Day, we face a harsh truth. Human rights are under assault. Tens of millions of people are mired in poverty, hunger, poor health and education systems that have not yet fully recovered from COVID-19 pandemic. Global inequalities are running rampant and conflicts are intensifying. International law is willfully ignored. Authoritarianism is on the march while civic space is shrinking. Hateful rhetoric is fueling discrimination, division and outright violence, and women's rights continue to be rolled back in law and practice. This year's theme reminds us that human rights are about building the future right now. All human rights are indivisible, whether economic, social, civic, cultural, or political. When one right is undermined, all rights are undermined. We must stand up for all rights always, healing divisions and building peace, tackling the scourges of poverty and hunger, ensuring health care and education for all, advancing justice and equality for women, girls, and minorities, standing up for democracy, press freedom, and workers' rights, promoting the right to a safe, clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, and defending human rights defenders as they carry out their vital work. The recently adopted Pact for the Future reinforced the world's commitment to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. On this important day, let's protect, defend, and uphold all human rights for all people.
Thank you very much. I do have now the pleasure to introduce the first speaker of the webinar. Massimo Intravigne is an Italian sociologist of religions. He is the founder and managing director of the Center for Studies of New Religions, an international network of scholars who study new religious movements. He is also the editor-in-chief of the online magazine Vita Winter. Massimo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Michele, and greetings to... Oh, no, the video is not needed. I'm speaking in person. So thank you, Michele, and greetings from Botswana, where I hope my connection will support me to the end. Celebrating Human Rights Day, I would like to start with some comments on one of the most fascinating words in Indo-European languages, rights. I believe we can also learn, as it often happens when we deal with words, why our individual and collective rights are the cornerstone of society. In the Proto-Indo-European language, supposedly emerging during the late Neolithic period and the Bronze Age, one very important word was rank. This was originally a verb. meaning to straighten or to rectify. It had already a deep meaning, since it could be used in the physical world, as in making a wall straight, and in a metaphorical sense, as in straightening or rectifying something that was wrong. Of course, rectify also includes the root reg and means to make something right. Then reg was used as a noun to indicate something that was straight, perhaps because it had been straightened. This was a desirable quality, both in the physical world and in the metaphorical use, and reg acquired the meaning of right. However, the richness of the Indo-European word reg does not end here, and has fascinated generations of scholars. Right, in the sense of straightened, is opposed to twisted. In the metaphorical or moral use, right is the opposite of wrong. But right is also a direction, as opposed to left. This is already an interesting question. Why the language indicates that right is a good direction and left is not. Note that the idea does not exist only in Indo-European languages. We found it in Hebrew and Aramaic texts of books of the Bible, where God, in the last judgment, sends the saved to the right and the damned to the left. All Christians know the prophecy of the Gospel of Matthew 25:41, when Jesus, through the image of a king, tells of when God, quote, will say to those on his left, depart from me, you are cursed, into the eternal fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. Those on his left, indeed, while those on his right will be saved. This is because the right is the place of people whose lives were straightened or rectified, and the left, by opposition, the place of twisted, unrectified lives. At this stage, we may be tempted to jump to politics. And indeed, the pun, the right is right and the left is wrong, has been used at various times in various versions of political propaganda. However, it is more than a joke. We know that we use in politics the word rights and left because at the time of the French Revolution, in the Estates General of 1789, the monarchists and the conservatives were seated on the right and the radicals on the left. But this was not coincidental. The conservatives were mostly cultivated people who knew that rex, Latin for king, comes from the same root of right, with the idea that the king should guarantee the harmony of a righteous and rectified society. So those in favor of the rex, the king, the monarchies, should sit at the right and identify themselves as the political right. Finally, the word rule comes from the Latin regula, and the same root reg appears again. The regulae, the rules, offer a map to make our lives and society right. And in a traditional society, the rex, the king, supervised the application of the regulae, the rules, which are in this sense things of the king. As opposite to all this, the rights of men, which became human rights in the 20th century, to underline they also included women, but the French language still used droit de l'homme, is a comparatively recent expression. It was introduced by the Enlightenment in the 18th century to replace the older natural rights and consecrated by the French Revolution. Some Enlightenment philosophers did not like the expression natural rights as it was used by the Catholic Church, which they opposed. The next generation of secular philosophers also raised doubts on the concept of a universal human nature. Finally, however, the expression human rights was generally accepted, including by the Catholic Church, and separated from its ideological origins. Human rights are just the rights all human beings have as human beings, without distinction. When we speak of human rights, however, we should not forget the origin and the very long history of the word rights. It indicates that what is twisted should be rectified. A just society is founded on making right what was wrong. This is the aim of justice, and when human rights have been violated, of transitional justice. When Taiwan incorporated, as we heard before, the two United Nations Human Rights Covenant into its domestic law in 2009, it undertook to create a system where past wrongdoings should be rectified or made right. And in the future, human rights should be affirmed and human wrongs should be punished. This has obviously not happened in the Taijimen case, a noticeable collection of human wrongs. The wrong perpetrated against Taijimen since 1996 has not been rectified or made right. The right has not triumphed over the wrong by punishing those who wronged the Taijimen either. On the contrary, the worst perpetrator, prosecutor Ho Guangzhen, has not been punished but repeatedly promoted. The idea of right is the cornerstone of a free, harmonious, and just society. But this idea is denied every day in Taiwan as long as the Taijimen case is not solved. I would like to conclude by praising the Taijimen Jitsu disciples who fight for justice by studying in depth legal and tax issues, but also by continuing their spiritual struggle to bring peace, love, and conscience to the world. By doing this, they affirm what is also a Christian idea, that rectifying wrongs is ultimately a spiritual achievement that comes from God, but also requires the daily efforts of women and men of goodwill. Christians still sing the golden sequence, which dates back to the 13th century, where they call on the Holy Spirit to come and rege quod est devium, straighten what is twisted, and not the use of rege again. Taiwan should now straighten what is twisted too. It is a legal fight, but it's also a spiritual fight, where conscience will one day prevail. Thanks to you all.
Thank you very much, Massimo. Now I have a pleasure to introduce the second speaker of the webinar. Here we are, Mr. Hans Noth. He is president of the Dutch Gerard Noth Foundation for Freedom of Religion or Belief, named after the Dutch legal scholar and a champion of religious liberty, Gerard Noth. He is member of the International Advisory Board of International Center for Law and Religious Studies at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah. Mr. Noth, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, and thank you, Massimo, for your clarity on the concept of rights. As we reflect on the cornerstone of our shared humanity, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in December 10, 1948, we think of a pivotal moment that emerged in the aftermath of one of the darkest periods in human history, a response to the atrocities of World War II. It represents a global commitment to uphold the dignity and worth of every human being. As we commemorate this declaration, let us take a moment to explore the significance of human rights as well as the violations against these rights that persist in our world today. Human rights are fundamental entitlements inherited to all individuals, regardless of their nationality, ethnicity, gender, religion, or any such status. They encompass the right to life and liberty, freedom of thought and expression, and the right to work and educate, and more. They are the bedrock of democratic societies and the very essence of our commitment to justice and equality. Yet, as the Declaration reminds us, the promotion of respect for these rights and freedoms is not just a legal obligation. It is a moral imperative. These rights are not to be granted by the state only, but protected as they're inalienable. They celebrate the fact that all of us are equal as humans. They actually protect humanity itself. Despite the comprehensive framework established by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we witness a multitude of human wrongs that underscore the urgent need for vigilance and action. Consider, for example, the plight of the refugees and the migrants around the world. According to the United Nations High Commissioner of Refugees, the UNHCR, over 117 million people were forcibly displaced by the end of 2023. And it's even worse at the moment. Many of these individuals face dire conditions in overcrowded camps, lack access to basic health care, and endure the ever-presence of threat of violence. Their fundamental rights of safety, dignity, and protection often remain unacknowledged, illustrating a profound global injustice. Another alarming example of human rights violations can be found in the systematic racial discrimination and violence that persists in many societies. Why is it that peoples of certain ethnic groups shout so loud for the wrongs done to themselves or their ancestors that it victimizes society as a whole by maintaining the status quo, while maintaining the status quo of racial discrimination? We're not tackling the racial discrimination problem. The humanity is losing ground. Laws are insufficient. Racial discrimination remains discrimination if we exchange the victims with the persecutors. We as people need to change our attitude. Furthermore, we must acknowledge the appalling situation of religious and political prisoners and dissenters in various countries. And the numbers are on the rise. In nations where freedom of expression is suppressed, dissenting voices are often silenced through intimidation, unlawful detention, and violence. Part of the refugee crisis in Europe is caused by religious intolerance in Pakistan and the Middle East, many of these refugees being Christians. And the current war conflicts are not helping one bit. As we reflect on these wrongs, let us remember the spirit of hope and resilience that defines our pursuit of justice. Each December 10th, we honor the progress made and acknowledge the challenges that remain. It is an invitation to recommit ourselves to the principles of Universal Declaration of Human Rights, while galvanizing our efforts to stand in solidarity with those rights for whose rights these are grossly violated. Today, we once again highlight a case that embodies the fight for human rights. One is that unfolding in Taiwan, the case of the Taiji men. This ongoing struggle, now spanning nearly 3 decades, highlights the intersection of cultural expression, spiritual beliefs, and human rights. Members of Taiji men have been unjustly targeted with baseless criminal charges and sustained persecution by a rogue prosecutor, the National Taxation Bureau, and government authorities. Legally and morally, they've been proven innocent. What makes this even more disturbing is that the victims in this case are a group dedicated to the promotion of peace and justice. Such organizations, known for their integrity and noble ideals, should be celebrated and honored, not victimized. The Tiananmen case is emblematic of a broader issue regarding the rights of freedom of assembly and belief. In a democratic society, individuals must be free to peacefully assemble, as said before, practice their beliefs, and express themselves without fear of state retaliation. Despite effort to resolve the situation through dialogue and legal channels, these injustices that infringe on their basic rights remain unresolved. This ongoing struggle raises critical questions about the protection of human rights in Taiwan and elsewhere, and the responsibilities of the state in upholding these rights for all citizens, regardless of their beliefs. The objective of governments is to treat all citizens equal, not to discriminate among them. It reminds us that the fight for justice is not just about the acknowledgement of past wrongs. It is about creating a future where the rights of all are respected and protected. Let us, as a case in point, remember the victims of human rights violations, including the practitioners of the Tiananmen, who continue to seek acknowledgement and justice. Together, let us strive to create a world where every person is treated with dignity, respect, and equality. Akin to the work of the Tiananmen, granting human rights starts with an attitude in the heart, spreads to the family, to the social groups we belong to nations, to the judiciary and national policy, into a world of peace. We have a long way to go. Let's get to it. Commemorating the signing of the Declaration of Human Rights today allows us to embody the spirit of change that it espouses. I applaud all who continue to advocate for those whose voices are silenced, those bodies tortured, and whose rights are taken from them, and support those that fight against oppression, and injustice. Let's work on holding leaders and judges accountable and demand that human rights be placed at the foreground of national and international policies, rather than economics, trade, and national security. Without human rights and the dignity humans as a species deserve, it is all the money in the world and even the existence of nations is completely worthless. Let's avoid future war atrocities that caused the creation of the Declaration of Human Rights in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. North. Now I'll pass the virtual baton to Mr. at moderation to Mr. Willy Potre.
Thank you.
A brief presentation.
Thank you.
Is the director of Human Rights Without Frontiers, an NGO based in Brussels, but he founded in 1988. He organizes conference at the European Parliament, including on freedom of religion and belief in China. Mr. Potre, the moderation of the baton is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And as usual, we will have a second session devoted to the disease as partners in this webinar. But first of all, we will watch a video. The title is from the series Conscience Story series, The Injustice and Divine Retribution of Zhu Qing's Case.
Tax and Law Story series, The Injustice and Divine Retribution of Zhou Qing's Case. This story was published in the Book of Han. There was a lady in the Lizi County named Zhou Qing. Her husband died shortly after the wedding day and left her childless. She chose to stay and did not remarry. More than 10 years passed, and she remained dedicated to caring for her mother-in-law. As Zhou Qing's mother-in-law aged, her health declined and she often fell ill. One day when Zhou Qing was out, her mother-in-law hanged herself out of guilt that she had become a burden. Zhou Qing was turned in for murder by her sister-in-law on seeing that death scene, despite Zhou Qing's explanation and neighbors' intervention. Zhou Qing, then tortured by orders of the magistrate, despite the attending advisor's call for a proper investigation and reminder about Zhou Qing's reputation as a dutiful and devoted daughter-in-law. In the end, Zhou Qing could not endure the torture. She gave up on defending herself and admitted to the crime. Zhou Qing received a death sentence. On the day of execution, a flag stood high at 33 meters above the ground. Zhou Qing proclaimed her innocence to the heaven and vowed that her blood would defy gravity. When she was beheaded, her blood indeed spread onto the top of the pole. That day on, Yizhi County saw drought for 3 years and residents suffered. The magistrate who tortured Zhou Qing was also impeached and banished to remote territory. A new magistrate took office and gathered the elders to discuss the drought situation to find a solution. One elder shared his opinion about Zhou Qing's mistrial and conviction might have enraged the gods and caused a natural disaster. Others questioned why the whole county had to suffer for the former magistrate's misconduct. On hearing different voices, the new magistrate decided to review Zhou Qing's trial. While reviewing the case files, the new magistrate fell asleep and had a dream. In his dream, the new magistrate was led to the city god by 2 staff officers. The city god then revealed to the new magistrate that Zhou Qing's unjust death sentence had indeed enraged the gods, who sent long drought as a punishment. The city god went on to explain that the former magistrate's misconduct had demoralized the region. This was a deep sin which took years off the former magistrate's life and warranted torment in hell. His offsprings were also condemned as a consequence. On the other hand, many residents of Yizhi County knew Zhou Qing was a dedicated daughter-in-law, yet nobody was brave enough to defend her. They became accomplices. Some even chose to believe the former magistrate and were convinced that Zhou Qing did kill her mother-in-law. In that sense, the whole county was sinned, and that was why the gods sent drought. One can never defy the heaven. The magistrate and village gentry built a memorial for Zhou Qing on behalf of all residents of Yizhi County to repent their wrongdoings. The ceremony was barely over when clouds started to gather and heavy rain began to fall. That year, Yizhi County enjoyed a good harvest.
Those histories are always amazing and so well done, with a moral lesson at the end. But let's hope that Taiwan will never experience such a treatment in the future. And before giving the floor to the Dizzy, I want to share a few thoughts with you about the topic of the day, so human rights versus human wrongs. The Tai Jimen case is a tragically emblematic case because it has accumulated all the characteristics of a willful mismanagement and denial of justice. First human wrong, the fabrication of a case. In the Taijimen case, everything started with the political instrumentalization of the powers of the Minister of Justice in 1996. In the wake of the presidential elections, the then Justice Minister carried out a purge against the religious movements that had not supported the elected President Lee Teng-hui. A shabby act of revenge by unworthy political leaders of a nation. Cases of tax evasion were fabricated not only against those religious movements politically engaged in the opposition, but also against Taijimen, which had always been neutral. At the end, almost all groups were found not guilty by the courts. However, it took much more time for Taijimen. Second human wrong is the illegal imprisonment. A part of the repression wave in 96 was a series of police raids on 19 Taijimen academies and the private homes of Dizzy, leading to the arrest, indictment, and imprisonment of Dr. Hong, his wife, and to Dizzy on the fabricated charge of fraud and tax evasion. Their detention in winter lasted for several months in difficult conditions. This was also part of the fabrication of the case by a politically crooked prosecutor. Third human wrong, the fabrication of victims this time. The crooked prosecutor allegedly discovered victims of Taijimen and, forgetting his duty of neutrality, promoted the establishment of a victims association. It was later found that there were no so-called victims in the Taijimen case, and the self-help association was essentially a scam. Fourth human wrong, the fabrication of a false charge. A tax collector testified that he had been pressured by a prosecutor to make a false statement about Taijimen. Basically, to declare he had discovered, after an alleged long investigation, that Taijimen was running a cram school financed by tuition fees, which should have been taxable. Before dying a few years ago, he eased his conscience and publicly revealed the truth. His statement concerning the non-guilt of Taijimen was confirmed by the Supreme Court in 2007, but the prosecutor was not prosecuted. Fifth human wrong, the illegal auction of properties. 24 years after the beginning of the fabricated case in 2020, Taiwan's National Taxation Bureau arbitrarily seized and auctioned properties which were expected to be used as a self-cultivation center and which belonged to Dr. Hong Tao-Tse, the founder and spiritual leader of Taijimen. The reason for the alleged failure to pay a backlog of taxes increased by interests and fines. Normally, officers of the National Tax Bureau receive a bonus based on the taxes they collect, which means there is a conflict of interest, an obvious conflict of interest, and they are not neutral. Sixth human wrong, the arrest of Mrs. Huang. In September 2020, several Taijimen Dizi participating as volunteers in the Tax and Legal Reform League took to the streets to peacefully protest and denounce the lucrative nature of the auction, but their demonstration was quickly disrupted by the police. A woman in her 60s, Mrs. Wang, was arrested and taken to the police station without any declared reason. Seventh human wrong, and the most recent one. This year there was a golden opportunity to solve the Taijimen case, which has become an international embarrassment for Taiwan. There was a new president and a new government. There was a new court case and the possibility, with new arguments, of a pragmatic yet just solution. Unfortunately, the opportunity was missed again. Injustice and not justice was served by Taichung High Administrative Court on the 2nd of August of this year. The infamous ruling about the fabricated case of tax evasion for the sole year 1992 was maintained. For sure, Taiwan's reputation of being a democratic country remains tarnished with the Taijimen case. The problem is not without solution, but political courage is needed for that. The fights in court are over, but the fight in the political arena will go on, and we hope it will finally be successful. And now I will give the floor to the first Dizzy, Rita Shen, a junior high school teacher. The floor is yours.
Hello.
Hello, Rita.
Hello,
You
everyone.
can speak.
Okay, I'm Rita. I am a teacher in junior high school in Taiwan, and this is my pleasure to join this forum of the United Nations Human Rights Day. Today is International Human Rights Day. Human rights are the basic rights that everyone is born with, and they should be equally enjoyed by all human beings, regardless of race, gender, age, nationality, language, religion, or any other status. More specifically, human rights include the right to life and liberty, freedom from slavery and torture, freedom of expression and speech, the right to work and receive education, freedom of thought, and the freedom to practice religion. And as I said before, I am a teacher. In addition to imparting subject knowledge at school, I constantly remind myself to act in a positive and proper manner in front of my students. Although it is not possible to be perfect in front of them, I always reflect on myself, on my mistakes, and consider how to improve the bad parts of my teaching. This is because I think students always observe how adults and the teachers deal with problems, and also they learn how adults face problems. Today's children are tomorrow's adults. If we want children to grow into upright and good adults, the role models, both in words and actions set by us, I mean grown-ups, around them, we are very important. It is normal that students make mistakes, but their responses to mistakes are very different. Some of them immediately admit their wrongdoings and sincerely try to correct. Other students only realize their mistakes after some explanation. However, there are children who stubbornly refuse to admit their mistakes, and even worse, they do not seek to correct themselves. These children often violate or infringe upon other human rights without even realizing it. They build their careless actions on the suffering of others. Sounds very serious, but they still believe that every fault lies with others. At the very beginning, when I faced these kind of students, I was very upset and very down because I always figure out the ways to teach them in a better way. I wonder why they were so inconsiderate. I also felt anxious and tried to think about how to help them understand that everyone is equal. So that should respect others' human rights. But now, after teaching for over 10 years, when I encounter similar students, I begin to think whether I see my own reflection in them. If yes, I will correct my bad parts. If no, I will put myself into their shoes and try to understand whether they have been influenced by their peers, adults, their parents, social media, or the society in Taiwan. Then I gradually guide them. Through this process, I have come to realize that students' thoughts and behaviors are a small society. Students are what society are. And when I broaden my perspective, I realize that whether a child grows up positively and actively is closely related to a sound and just national system. Here, I want to discuss the flaws of Taiwan's current tax system, as taxes affect every one of us. Take, for example, the landmark human rights case of the Taijimen case, which has not received true justice even after 28 years. Before I understood this case, I always thought that Taiwan's administrative agencies were clear about the distinction between public and private matters, and that they follow the law. After learning about this case, I discovered that Taiwan's administrative agencies would protect each other and even break the law by stealing and auctioning private property. Dr. Hong Daozi, the founder of Taiji Men, established Taiji Men Qigong Academy in 1966 to teach his Dizi life philosophical wisdom, guiding them in spiritual cultivation, practicing Qi and the mind, strengthening their bodies, and cultivating virtues. Taiji Men is also an international nonprofit cultural organization committed to promoting the health of body, mind, and spirit, and spreading the Taijimen culture worldwide. With love and conscience, the Dizi travel to spread peace, and Taijimen has visited 113 countries and has had 604 influential leaders from 155 countries, including 75 heads of state and 15 Nobel Peace Prize laureates, joining in the global call for peace. In 2019, Dr. Hong also helped the United Nations declare April 5th as International Conscience Day, which has since been recognized by over 200 countries. Such a fine public welfare cultural group, however, has been persecuted by Taiwan's public authority, even though the Supreme Court has already ruled that Taijimen is innocent and owes no taxes. The tax authorities have still issued unlawful tax bills and auctioned Taijimen's property, forcibly transferring it to the state. The government agencies knowingly broke the law, but did not correct their mistakes. This is like the same way as I said before, the bad students. How can such a government agency be expected to provide good social education to the people? The prosecutor who handled the Taijimen case, Hou Kuanren, was investigated by the Control Yuan in 2002 and found guilty of 8 serious legal violations, with the Control Yuan requesting that Ministry of Justice to hold him accountable. However, the Ministry of Justice took no action. In 2010, the Control Yuan corrected the Ministry of Justice, pointing out that they treated this case like an ordinary citizen's complaint, delaying justice for many years, even undermining Taiwan's constitutional system. Now, Hou Kuanren not only escaped punishment, but also was promoted to deputy director of the anti-corruption agency in 2018, and later became the director of the Forensic Research Institute. This is truly ironic. As the saying goes, when the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. From Taijimen case, we can understand that Taiwan's judicial and tax systems really need reform. A mere prosecutor's actions from 1996 have violated Taiwan's constitutional principles, and an illegal tax bill led to the auctioning of people's property. This is unthinkable. It is not the behavior of a democratic country with a sound legal system. To ensure that our future generations have proper values and conduct, and that the people of the world are not wronged, this is crucial that we all pay attention and awaken the conscience of our officials. We need those in power and with responsibility to discern right from wrong and put an end to such injustice and immorality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rita, for your testimony and for sharing with us your experience with your students, because they pose the challenge to your status as a teacher at some time of your career, at least at the beginning. Their thoughts and behavior, you said, are a microcosm of society because,
Yes.
yeah, at an early age already, what society is. Indeed, they copy and paste on their own minds the thoughts and behaviors of their parents and other adults around them. And the challenge of the teacher is to shape the minds of the youth
Yes.
as soon as possible before their minds become fossilized, I would say, and difficult to change. And teaching them to integrate human rights in their own lives as soon as possible is one way of paving the way for a better future for them and for society. So thanks again for sharing your views and your feelings. And I will now give the floor to Chen Wei Kan, a university student. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello everyone, I'm Jerry Kan. Today I'm very honored to join this International Forum for United Nations Human Rights Day. As a university student, I once had high hopes for human rights and the rule of law in Taiwan. However, the Taijimen case made me realize that my country still faces serious challenges in democracy and justice. The Taijiman case has lasted for 28 years and still hasn't been resolved. It shows how administrative agencies have ignored court rulings, leading to abuse of power and violations of human rights. In 1996, Taijiman was falsely accused during the government's religious crackdown and unlawfully taxed. In 2007, the Supreme Court ruled that Taijiman was innocent and owed no taxes. However, administrative agencies ignored this decision, continued to impose illegal taxes, and even auctions off their spiritual site in 2020. Taking for the state, Prosecutor Ho Kwan-ren held only 3 hearings over 117 days, asking the leader 13 questions in total, which took only 29 minutes. He then issued an indictment that ignored scientific evidence. Later, the control yuan found the indictment did not match the evidence and shouldn't have been filed. This rush indictment has affected tens of thousands of families for decades. The core issue of this case lies in the dual failure of the administrative and judicial systems. Tax authorities, without conducting thorough investigations, rely solely on the indictment to impose illegal taxes. Meanwhile, the judicial system failed to provide proper oversight and corrective measures, leaving the case unresolved for years. This not only violated the basic rights of the victims, but also eroded public trust in the rule of law. In recent years, similar cases of injustice have repeatedly occurred in Taiwanese society. For example, in the well-known tax disaster case of Huang Wenhuang, he was appointed by the court to help tax authorities resolve issues and served as an estate administrator for abandoned inheritance cases. Yet, he was unfairly targeted by the tax authorities, earning him the title of the most unfortunate public interest lawyer in history. At the time, Deputy Minister of Finance Zhang Shenghe even told him, "If we don't find you, you'll collude with those heirs." Such actions compel us to reflect. When the law becomes a tool for the abuse of public power rather than a fortress of justice, the harm goes beyond individuals' victims. It undermines society's trust and order as a whole. The illegal actions of Taijiman's land is truly heartbreaking. A piece of land originally intended for spiritual cultivation and cultural promotion became the target of the forced auction due to an unlawful tax bill issued by the National Taxation Bureau, and was ultimately confiscated by the state. This event served as a stark reminder that while the law is foundation of governance, without the constraints of conscience and justice, and without prioritizing the protection of human rights, public power can be abused, causing irreparable harm to rights of the people. Therefore, the Taijiman case teaches us that officials in administrative and judicial systems need not only professional knowledge, but also a strong sense of conscience. Only by acting according to the law and keeping the well-being of people in mind can they prevent the misuse of power from harming the innocent. I'm a university student and a young advocate for social justice. I believe we should not focus solely on systems and laws, but also emphasize the moral education and sense of responsibility of public officials. A legal system without foundation of conscience is ultimately an empty shell. Incapable of truly safeguarding the rights and fairness of people, we should raise our voice and call for every public servant to constantly ask themselves when exercising their authority, does the decision align with my conscience? Does it truly benefit the people? As a student of sports and leisure, I am passionate about human health and well-being. In the future, I hope to further study physical therapy and work in the professional healthcare industry in the United States, using my skills to improve patients' quality of life. In this field, we learn an important core value. All decisions must be based on fairness and conscience, because all work directly affects people's health and safety. Any negligence or mistake could lead to irreversible harm to patients' lives. The same principle applies to public service. When laws and policies are enforced without integrity and fairness, the impact is not limited to individuals, but affects the trust and order of the entire society. The history of Taijiman case shows that if administrative and judicial systems fail to uphold justice and conscience, vulnerable groups will suffer unnecessary harm for a long time. And then trust that should exist will be completely destroyed. Finally, I want to say that human rights are not guaranteed. They are a core value that each generation must fight for and protect. The Taijiman case reminds us that the protection of the rule of law and human rights is not just a promise written in legal texts, but requires the attention and effort of every individual. We cannot wait for another similar case to happen. We must start today, using knowledge and action to defend the rights that may seem small, but deeply shape the values of our society. Thank you.
And thank you, Jerry, for highlighting the fact that the rule of law can be manipulated by evil minds, and that the rule of law is not necessarily the rule of justice. And this is what the DC have experienced and what they should fight against every time they see abuses of power, when they discover violations of human rights, when they notice gaps in the illegal implementation of the laws. Injustice must always be combated, but it must be done on the basis of the teachings of Taijimen, with conscience and peace of mind, never with feelings of revenge or hate, never with physical or verbal violence. Thank you again. And now we'll give the floor to Luna Ho, an elementary school teacher. The floor is yours.
Okay. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Luna, and I'm honored to participate today's forum. I was taught to abide by what the government enforces. I never thought about fighting for my own human rights until I encountered the Taijuman Fair case, realized the important value of human rights, and began a volunteer to promote love, peace, and human rights. It has been 28 years since this case occurred, and is still on the road to vindication. It requires everyone's joint attention because it's related to the human rights of tens of thousands of families, and it's also related to the entire society, country, and everyone in the world. The right to live in peace and the freedom from infringement of human rights. In December 1996, when I returned to the office at noon, I saw the news on TV that the Taiji man was suspected of fraud and the Zhang Menren was detained. I was stunned on the spot. Why will this happen suddenly? What followed was an overwhelming series of fraud and false accusations coming from the media, prosecutor, and illegal officials from various government departments. I became happy because I went to Taijuman practice, but facing my family, colleagues, friends, and the general public, I didn't dare to go out wearing Taijuman practice clothes because I was afraid of other people's eyes. Every lunchtime, the TV in the office cast about Taijuman's arrows and the first news. I don't know how to explain to my colleagues, and I can hardly eat anymore. And a good friend of mine also broke off this friendship because of a misunderstanding. At that time, more than 400 sensational and false reports and the pressure of public opinion filled of my daily life. This case exposed officials' abuse of power and illegal acts one by one, including prosecutors, fabrication of false evidence, and illegal prosecutions. The National Taxation Bureau, prosecutor, and administrative enforcement agency teamed up to illegally seize people's property. The administrative court judge made a wrongful ruling on July 13, 2007. The judiciary found out the truth after 3 trials. The Supreme Court finally ruled that Taijuman had committed no crime, no fraud, no tax evasion, and no violation of tax collection law. The tribute gift presented to the Shifu by 弟子 is a gift and is tax-free according to law. The judiciary represents the highest law of the country, and all government agencies should abide by the judgment. But the crimes still continue, and even illegally robbing Taijuman's assets. In fact, Article 117 of the Administrative Procedure Law stipulates that the original disciplinary authority may revoke illegal administrative sanctions. That's what the government should do. Why not? I once saw a city councillor lie and slander Taijuman on TV, but I couldn't speak out. I still remember that feeling. It's very painful for people to be illegally suppressed by public power. I faced it with my Shifu, Shimu, and many brothers and sisters, but we still express it. Many difficulties and dangers. So what should those people who face the oppression of public power alone do? We must promote human rights as soon as possible.
Yeah. You finished?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you,
Yes,
Luna.
I can continue. Yes. Yes,
Okay.
I can continue.
Yeah, continue
Okay.
then.
Yes. Okay.
So thank you for
Okay.
sharing with us. Yeah, go
Excuse
on.
me. So what should those people who face the operation of public power alone do? We must promote human rights as soon as possible. This is saving people, ourselves, and the world. In the process of promoting the human rights of transition, someone once said, that's useless and cannot change anything. On the road of promoting love and peace, some people also ask, will the world really be peaceful in this way? But I know that when I help others I gain peace and salvation in my own heart, and the word has more power of kindness. The evil in people's hearts has brought the world to the brink of destruction. We must start from the foundation, which is to promote conscience education. I once followed my shifu to India to attend the International Conference of Global Chief Justice. At that time, the Dalai Lama, the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, rang the bell of world peace and love. He said, true peace must come from within. Therefore, we must extinguish the fire of hatred in our hearts, and this must start with education. Yes, I have served as a human rights education lecturer in many schools and have also gone to the Montessori school in India to promote human rights education. At that time, I saw a group of people in, in the lower class because of the caste system. Even their children and grandchildren would never be able to stand up. They may realize that people should not go against the will of God and deprive others of their human rights. I've written to the president and officials many times and stood in front of the presidential palace and the various government agencies to seek help, expressing my demands to cancel illegal tax bills and rescue all tax-hit families. I realized that the distance between officials and people is actually only a distance of conscience. I also went to West, Central, and East Africa to promote love and peace because of the compassion, courage, and the true wisdom of Shifu and Shimu. The three presidents rang the bell of world peace and love, made peace wishes, and implemented them. These touching stories encourage me to keep going. Till this day, the illegal officials have not returned the Taiji man's practice Holy Land in Miaoli, but the Taiji man has traveled to 113 countries with the peace bear, also advocated legal and tax issues, and helped many tax-hit families. For example, Miss Wu Pei-chun, who only works in a crane school, was falsely accused by the NTB of being the owner of the crane school, and she was entangled with illegal tax bills for more than 20 years. She suffered from depression and cancer, and her life was in a desperate situation. Now she's finally cleared. So let us firmly believe that the more people come forward, the more justice can be demonstrated and the more unjust cases can be unjust. In Taiwan, every township has a 2D gong. According to folklore, he was a tax collector who upheld justice and helped the people. After his death, he became a god. This story encourages officials to uphold their conscience and value human rights. And each of us must become each other's 2D gong, defend justice together, and help human rights be spread and implemented. Thank you all.
And thank you, Luna, for
Thank you.
sharing with us the so-called collateral damages caused by false accusations against Taiji men in your personal life and in the lives of the Dizzy in general. I mean the negative impact of hundreds of articles, radio and TV news vilifying Taiji men and casting suspicion on the morality of its members for at least 10 years after their innocence was confirmed by the Supreme Court. But in the meantime, people will have forgotten the case. And it's good to have, yes, a positive decision by a court, but when it's so many years later, then people forget. And they just keep the first negative impression from the coming from the media. So this was the case about Taiji Man. And so those court decisions always come too late. They may be totally ignored by the media on purpose, just because, or not, but on purpose because they don't want to recognize that they were wrong. And they don't want to recognize the damage that they caused in the lives of the disease. And this may remain unnoticed because it does not make the headlines anymore, as it was the case during the defamation campaign. And such damage is almost irreparable. Thank you for sharing those things with us. And now I will give the floor to Jeffrey Hung, a university student.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hello.
Hi everyone. My name is Joffrey, and I'm a university student now in studying Canada, and I'm so glad with you guys here today. And human rights, it's a universal value and require mutual respect. Based on my own life in different culture and country, I can feel that the inclusive society and a positive social environment have a profound impact on people, such as different gender, race, religions, language, nationality, or background. Uh, a positive social environment means that people do not need to worry about their rights, and a more important thing is that people do not need to be afraid of speaking out for themselves or society. Like I remember in 2018, that's my first time on Indian with my sifu, Dr. Hong Daozi, to attend the international conference of Chief Justice of the world. I deeply remember that the slogan of this conference was "We are one," which words are also deeply printed into my mind. Since that moment, I clearly understood that people are like cell. They might look a little different, uh, but they are inseparable, even though we are all individual, but we are all connected. So as a citizens of the world, I will share my views about human rights. When it comes to human rights, we have to mention the most iconic Taiji case in Taiwan. In 1996, it was a it was a human rights persecution case that was carried out in the name of religious crackdowns, but was actually a political purge. And the fake case was created by persecutors and tax officials. The case stigmatized Taijimen and made impossible tax. In 2011, the executive yuan held an interdepartmental meeting and decided that criminal indictment material could no longer be used to impose taxes. The announcement investigation results shows that 100% stated the 进士礼 was a gift to our Sifu. However, the National Taxation Bureau, which is called NTB, ignored the announced investigation results and continues to impose taxes based on the indictment information and keep compulsory taxation. Then in 2020, they teams up with the administrative and exclusive office to illegally auction Taijimen's property and nationalize it forcibly. I just like at that moment I don't really understand why the NTB had so much power to the Taijimen case that was fabricated out of thin air, has not been truly vindicated yet. So like I just feel like Taijimen has been bullied for 28 years. Yeah, so because prosecutors Ho Kwan who investigated the Taijimen case and used the media to smear Taijimen in the past 28 years, and Taijimen deeds had to endure social misunderstanding, slander, and discrimination, and some brother and sister even lose their job and their families were destroyed. So it's a Taijimen deeds. I can't imagine that's this is just a tip of the iceberg under the persecution of law and taxes. Um, and what makes me even more like incomprehensible, it's that's the 近视力 just is that exactly a gift, and is this like a simplest right or wrong questions? If they make this mistake, it it cannot be changed. If it cannot be changed, like how should I expect it and imagine the future of the society? So I believe that taxation must be in accordance with the law so that people property rights can be protected. Otherwise, like a Taijimen case, the NTB can randomly determine the basis for taxation. That is not the behavior of a democratic country governed, and the people will live in fear and insecurity. So like now looking around the world has been in turmoil and people are panicked in the recent years. War and poverty have results in the inability to guarantee basic living rights in many areas, and political persecutions prevents citizens of some countries from enjoying freedoms of speech, and gender inequally persists in education and employment, and moreover, discrimination against ethnic, immigration, gender, and military group, and further weakens the fairness and inclusive society. This phenomenon reminds us that human rights require everyone's efforts to defend, because once left unchecked, people rights violation will intensify, affecting the stability and prosperity of the entire society. So, and all we can do is start from ourselves. So that's why we are here today. And human right is like respect for everyone in daily life, regardless of their background, culture, or belief. Human right is an important and long-term advancements because it is closely linked to the environment of the next generation. Human rights is the bottom line of human survival and require people to respect each other. So as I mentioned in the beginning, people are like cell. We are individuals, but all connected together. So human rights need each of us to work together, save together, protect together, and just let's get it. And thank you all.
And thank you, Jeffrey, for recalling the impact of the fake Taijimen case on the personal life of the deceased. You said, and I quote, some brothers and sisters lost their jobs and their families were destroyed, unquote. But many others were stigmatized by their neighbors, their colleagues in the workplace, or classmates at school as well. And others also hid their faith in Taijiment and went underground as the first Christians in the times of Emperor Nero, I would say. And you listed a number of human rights which needed to be defended, and you remind us that human rights require everyone's efforts to defend them. Because once left unchecked, you said that at the end, once left unchecked and neglected, they will be increasingly violated, and this will affect the stability and the prosperity both of the citizens and of the entire society. Thank you for your reflections.
Thank you.
And the last speaker will not be a student, will not be a teacher this time. It's Chi Chong Woo, Vice President of Medical Equipment Manufacturer. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Willie. I should say good evening, everyone. I'm so honored today to attend this forum. As we know, today, December 10, is the United Nations Human Rights Day, which began with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in 1948. I'm so proud that the Chapter 2, the People's Rights and Obligations of the Constitution of the Republic of China, that is Taiwan, is very similar to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. They are almost the same. It is because Dr. Zhang Junmai, one of the co-authors of the Charter of the United Nations, which is the mother of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Dr. Zhang Junmai is the very author of the Constitution of Taiwan. Furthermore, according to Taiwan's law for implementation of the two covenants of human rights, Taiwan should have human rights, right? However, I'm even more ashamed that we have more human wrongs in Taiwan than human rights. What's going on? The most obvious one is the Taijimen case. Here, I would like to analyze the Taijimen case and seek a resolution. Talking about the Constitution, although similar to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, was far less successful. Our Constitution came into effect in 1947, when the nationalist government has been disastrously defeated by China Communist Party in the bloody civil war of China, which claimed tens of millions of lives. For almost 40 years, the Constitution has been suspended. Just 5 months after it come into effect. However, suspending the constitution failed to save the nationalist government. Now, in 1950, the nationalist government blamed the defeat on so-called communist spies. So it established a bonus system, the anti-spy law, to encourage people to report spies. The spy, when the spy was caught, the spy was executed by a bullet, and all the spy's property was confiscated, of which 30% was given to the reporters as bonus. Under such a huge inducement, hundreds of thousands of innocent people were reported as spies and then killed or lifetime imprisoned. In 1952, the nationalist government was too poor to provide reasonable salaries to the officials. So it connived in disguise by allowing officials to withhold some money from official business. This was to legalize corruption. That's awful. And to collect more taxes to pay the officials. A bonus system for reporting tax evasion was also established in 1954, just like the anti-spy law. This bonus is actually a conflict of interest and improper inducement for officials to abuse their power to collect excessive taxes. It legalized corruption and has caused many human wrong cases. Many officials, even after the lifting of martial law in 1987, are still right now enjoying legalized corruption. For example, former finance minister Xu Zhe even claimed in the Congress, hey, if you want human rights, just forget about taxes at all. This is my comment. Xu Zhe disgraced the two human rights covenants and the Constitution in public, which he once swore to obey. In 1996, Taijimen false case was nothing but a fabricated case. It was a political purge, just like Jeffrey said, a political purge after the first democratically presidential election. The motivation to launch such a political purge was not that Taijimen participated in election, but because Taijimen did not participate in the election. Prosecutor Hou Kuanren instigated tax collector Shi Yuesheng to fabricate tax bills and records and even false statements, which is documented in the name of persons who have died for many years. This is totally fabricated. Although in terms of criminal matters, the Taijimen Shifu and the Dizis were all proven innocent in the first, second, and the final trials. However, in terms of taxation, the National Tax Bureau, NTB, repeatedly applied a fabricated tax bill to form a set of 1,000-year tax bills. I'm sorry, I cannot find a suitable term, so I call it 1,000 years tax bills. It never happened in the Western world. The defendants spent all their resources on endless litigation. just like slaves being tortured by a treadmill. The administrative courts reduce themselves, or I may say, disgrace themselves. As a servant of the NTB, they did only copying the biases of NTB and not ruling in accordance to the law. There were even judges who should have recused themselves but failed to evade, resulting in an illegal judgment, allowing the administrative and enforced agent to seize the sacred land of Taijimen in Miaoli. Furthermore, Taipei NTB officials use liquid paper, the kind of correction of liquid paper to alter official documents in order to confiscate Taijimen's property. Oh, these measures are taken so that the official can obtain legalized bonus. That is corruption. Yes, this is the very reason why human wrongs cannot be corrected as human rights. It is because of corruption. Let me quote Dr. Martin Luther King. He said that the greatest tragedy of this period of social transition was not the strident clamor of the bad people, but the appalling silence of the good people. Now, I'm not going to remain silent anymore. I suggest two actions. First, encourage Taiwan citizens to supervise the Congress to amend the draft under review, law on trial of tax affairs, so that it can truly eliminate the 1,000-year tax bills. One of the key issues is that the NTB might temporarily transfer a tax collector who is eligible of tax bonuses, to serve as a tax examiner in the court. If this happens, the court will be rigid by NTB, and no taxpayer could survive the 1,000-year tax bills. I suggest the second action is to encourage the whole world to supervise Taiwan officials and ensure they abide by the two human rights covenants. This is their obligation, right? The Taiwan government regularly invites international human rights experts to Taiwan to review our national human rights report. However, officials use sophistry to deal with the suggestion made by human rights experts. This is, I'm so ashamed of that. For example, in 2022, human rights experts suggest that the government should abide by Article 14, Paragraph 1 of the International Covenants on Civil and Political Rights in response of the frequently happened human wrongs, where judges should have recused themselves, but they did not. However, the judicial yuan responded. Here is their response. This is not enough yet to constitute an intolerable appearance of judicial bias or prejudgment under the Constitution. The following is my comment. Hey, how far does the judicial yuan require the people to endure before reform or even revolution? In the Taiwan human wrong case, some judges in the Taijimen human wrong case, some judges more than 2, participated in the judgment of the High Administrative Court, and then they attend the Supreme Administrative Court, which blatantly violate the law. How can people still believe that the judiciary is fair and objective in Taiwan? These 2 actions are only the first step in realize the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And Taiwan still has a long way to go. Here, I would like to invite everyone today who enjoy human rights to help Taiwan. Please help Taiwan. Please help us in realize the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Constitution. When Taiwan has human rights, the whole world will be all right. This is all my presentation. Thank you. Excuse me, microphone.
Yeah. I was just saying we have the same admiration for Martin Luther King, and especially that excerpt that you mentioned. And thank you, and even thanks a lot, I would say, for telling us the story of the origin of the taxation bonuses, which was totally unknown to me. 1950, the defeat of the nationalist government and the scapegoating of communist spies, leading to a bonus system to encourage people to report spies. I didn't know about that. And the spies, as you said, were then executed by a bullet, and their property was confiscated from their families, of course. And 30% of the confiscated property was then used as bonuses for whistleblowers. That's really new to me. But the worm was, as you said, already the worm was already in the fruit, and thousands of people were falsely reported as spies for informers to legally loot their assets and their property. That was really the worm in the fruit. And this legacy was transmitted to the tax administration, which went on living in that sort of Taiwanese McCarthyism, I would say. The veneer of honor was that officials were poorly paid, deserved to get more money, especially if they contributed to hunt tax evaders. And that's how the bonus system was introduced in the tax administration in 1954, you said. A so-called win-win operation? No, certainly not. Not a win-win operation, because it was in fact legalized corruption. Thank you really for explaining us that system and its historical roots. And now we have reached the end of this session, and I will give the floor back to Michele so that he can introduce the last speaker.
Here we are. I'd like to introduce Michael Respinto for final consideration, journalist who is not here today online, but I guess we do have his video that our fellow technicians are going to launch.
Thank you. It is now my privilege to draw some conclusion, thanking Human Rights Without Frontier and CESNUR, the Center for Studies on New Religions, who sponsor and organize these webinars. Today, the United Nations calls the world to celebrate a special day of observance honoring human rights. The most remarkable thing of this day is not the initiative of the United Nations that proclaim it. It is the fact that humanity needs to establish a special day to remind itself that human beings have rights. This is in fact something that we would all prefer to consider as taken for granted by everyone in every place and at every time. And unfortunately, it is not so. It is indeed a curious situation. We live in a world where rights multiply every single day and everything seems to have rights. Today, rights are the products of imagination, social consensus, even ideology and power. Each group that has the practical force to impose itself upon society can claim to have established one or more new rights to which everyone then has to bow. Those who don't are denounced as backward looking. This mechanism, which today has its best ally and weapon in social media, seems to have almost substituted democracy. Rights are often those decided by the majority, but it may be the majority of those truly convinced of them or of those just scared by a possible reaction by others. There is also a violent version of this new and quite dubious philosophy of rights and human rights. Tyrants, be they internationally powerful idiocrats like the leaders of large and dreadful rogue nations, or petty demagogues, as it happens when small countries indulge in local despotism, are convinced that might is right, as the old saying goes. Every time they have or think to have an effective might, they use it to impose their will as a right that the international community is asked to recognize immediately. They grab land, invade countries, kill foreign nationals, and destroy society as they please, convinced that their ideology of superiority and negation of others entitles them to rewrite the rules of international coexistence. This situation shows that humankind is not yet up to its humanity. It has not reached the level of maturity that can grant inherent respect to every human being. It is a shameful state of affairs. Humans are the only living beings on Earth able to conceptualize and recognize, uphold, and revere intangible rights, yet they systematically tread upon them and twist them in ways that no other living being is able to. The injustice that Taizhimen has been suffering for more than a quarter of a century and still suffers in the Republic of China and Taiwan for having committed no crime is a substantial part of this unbelievable paradox which humanity lives by. Let us repeat it loud and clear today on the UN Human Rights Day 2024. Taizhimen is an empire similar to a school of Qigong, martial arts, and self-cultivation. It is centered on conscience, which it regards as its chief or grandmaster, Dr. Hong Tao-tse teaches, as the key to face and, when possible, solve all problems. As an extension of the educated self that it puts at the core of its effort to produce better human beings, Taizhimen considers universal understanding and harmony not only as the natural results of its endeavor to improve humankind, but as the essential conditions in which true human life prospers. Peace for Taizhimen is not only the consequence of a correct behavior and mutual treatment among humans, but the original and ultimate style of human conduct, the only possible one if human beings are to avoid wrongdoings. We could even push the argument so far as to say that for Taizhimen, human rights are all summarized in the fundamental liberty of all human beings to exercise themselves in becoming more and more human every single day. They strive to build such a humane world that it will know no evil anymore. It is simple, but it is not simplistic or naive, because there will be no room left for evil when all humans will be fully human. For this reason, Taizhimen is composed of decent disciples who are peaceful and naturally law-abiding, thinking that just laws are there to help women and men to become better citizens. Consequently, they are also patriotic, since they cultivate no idea of sedition or rebellion, revolt or revolution that can damage their fellow citizens and their communal life. Yet Taizhimen has been devastated by a number of false accusations ranging from tax evasion, as the most easily understandable yet false, to raising evil spirits through black magic as the most absurd. All levels of the Taiwanese justice, including the Supreme Court, have demonstrated that this castle of nonsense stands on fabricated lies, repeatedly clearing Taijimen from all charges in different courts of law. Yet, the consequences of that case still impose a heavy burden on the movement, whose property has been unjustly nationalized. Its members cannot freely enjoy freedom of religion or belief due to the evil action of some corrupt bureaucrats. The Taijimen case spectacularly exemplifies the denial of human rights that is still so common in our world. Its singularity is that it unites the way of disregarding human rights in the democratic relativistic countries, where everyone can decide what a human right is, and the arrogant way of the despots, who impose on the world their twisted idea of human rights based on power. In fact, the corrupt bureaucrats that started, fueled, and apparently still manage the Taijimen case have both decided what human rights are and use force to impose these insolent views of theirs on others. But the opposite is the ultimate truth. Human rights are not the product of majorities, votes, imposition, or violence. They are the sacred limit that defines the intangibility of a person. No one can curtail or deny them, twist or engineer them. Human rights are the indisputable entitlement of every single human being to life and liberty. In fact, if life and liberty are regarded as the sacred limit that defines the intangibility of a person, every infringement of life and liberty is unjustifiable and intolerable. A society built on such premises would be a society where misdeeds are limited and even tend to disappear. This is why the mission of Taijimen for self-cultivation and peace in the world is a supreme contribution to truly and fully respecting human rights. The United Nations should then quite carefully observe the case of Taijimen in Taiwan and advocate for its immediate solution. The argument that the Republic of China in Taiwan is not a member state of the UN is only sophistry and an excuse. Solutions exist. Only if the UN takes the Taijimen case seriously, its call on upholding human rights will be sincere and effective, and humanity will finally be more human. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael Spinkin. Before launching the last video of the webinar, I would like to thank everybody for the contribution. Not only we assisted with stress to the wrongdoings of the Taijimen movement by means of the witnesses, and not only we stress the political and also Michael Spinkin his contribution stressed the wrongdoings of political and moral featured society. We did indeed we stress the fact that Rome wasn't built in a day. The same for universal peace and human rights defense. We need to build our society. Is quoting Edgar Morin, we need to create a virtuous loophole, not only loopholes that lead to wrongdoings, to the degeneration of political and moral part of the society, but we need to focus on specific aspects that are crucial in the collaboration between culture and civilization. That's why, and that misquoted Edgar Morin again, that both technology and a human relationship can create a virtuous loophole that can really endorse specific values and turn them in active policies. Otherwise, we cannot correct the wrongdoings in our society. Once again, thanks for precious contribution today, and I do have the honor to launch the last video of this webinar.
on their promise to revoke the tax bill. The National Tax Bureau illegally auctioned off the sacred land of Taijimen. The land was illegal ship. Where is the royal government of just conscience? Where are justice and human rights? What is the truth about the Taijumen case? Taiwan Supreme Court found Taijumen not guilty of tax evasion or any other charges. The National Tax Bureau and the Ministry of Finance reneged on their promise to revoke the tax bill. The National Tax Bureau illegally auctioned off the sacred land of Taijumen. The land was illegally taken into state ownership. Where is the royal government of just conscience? Where are justice and human rights? The righteous people are united with conscience to defend justice, human rights, and peace. The righteous people are united with conscience to defend justice, human rights, and peace.
In Taiwan, we at Bitter Winter saw at work the Taliban of the National Tax Bureau or Taliban of the Administrative Enforcement Agency, justify year-long persecution of a peaceful spiritual movement in a democratic country such as Taiwan. The Taijumen case is internationally exemplary and important, and yet we plan to continue our campaign about it. Our voice will not be silenced until the voice of justice will speak and solve the case.